I feel like things are getting much scarier with regards to how things are becoming. Because if this movie is showing me anything, is that I feel like we're going down this route. I hope that I am sarcastically telling myself that or just paranoid myself with the idea. But I mean, come on, guys, with the background world building that this movie tells you about and how things are now, not too far fetched. I guess you could say the only difference is that one is super duper corny about it, at least how this movie portrays it, versus now where it's just getting much scarier. But let's face it, the film does showcase something that is possible now than it was 35 to 40 years ago. It's possible now. Not back then, now. Yeah, it's America for you.
The prize is his life.
How about the light?
The Running Man.
The Running Man 1987 is directed by Paul Michael Glaser with a screenplay by Stephen E. Souza. The film stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, María, Conchita, Alonso, Yaphet, Kotto, and Richard Dawson. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, in a future dystopian America, a wrongfully accused and convicted policeman gets his shot at freedom when he's forced to participate in a TV game show where convicts called runners must battle killers for their freedom. Schwarzenegger is man I grew up watching his films during middle school. I was at that point, in terms of my age, where I kind of wanted to explore a little bit with film, excited into watching movies that I had never really seen before. And my parents said to me, hey, you're getting to that age, and even though you're used to your usual stuff, I think we'll be okay with you starting to explore a little bit more like R-rated stuff. Now, they didn't throw me into the deep end with regards to movies that were coming out at the time, but they at least started me with stuff that would be considered classics or at least appreciated by a lot of film goers and audiences. And this man started that off with my R-rated movie journey. From the Terminator franchise, Predator, and Total Recall, the Governor has had a soft spot whenever he's in an action flick. No matter what it is, no matter how bad the movie is, because I can tell you, Schwarzenegger has had his fair share of movies that have not gone well, but I will always have a soft spot for that entertainment because ever since watching The Terminator, that has left a huge imprint on me as not only being the first 80s R-rated movie, but just the first R-rated movie for me. When it comes to this movie, however, I had never seen it, but had always heard how enjoyable this science fiction film was for fans. Now, of course, this is based off of the book by Richard Bach, although it has already been established that it is Stephen King. But still, nevertheless, it was written by him. People enjoyed it, made into a film adaptation in 87. So naturally, people would hope for at least a good adaptation of a Stephen King novel, or at the very least an entertaining one with Schwarzenegger in it. I know people would think about the idea of how The Running Man and its social commentary can play with having the Governor as your main star. And I'll say this, I can agree with that opinion as well. I think that this is an enjoyable, fun, albeit flawed action movie, okay? It is. It's got some problems for me, but aside from those few issues, it's just another fun time with Schwarzenegger just kicking ass. If there is anything I can always take away from his movies is that can he at least just beat up a bunch of dudes? Can he just kill them in gruesome ways that I have always enjoyed? And you have to, okay? This is a rule, especially with Schwarzenegger. Can you at least give me a chef's kiss pun, or at the very least a nice, satisfying pun? Something that has a little zing to it. Because if there's one thing that man knows how to do, is that he knows how to just hit you with a good pun, no matter what it is. He could throw so many puns at me, and I would still love it, because he just knows how to hit it right. Before going into my problems that I do have with this movie, here are the positives. The performances are entertaining. Schwarzenegger is fun but intense as Ben Richards, a man framed for a crime and forced to compete in the show. As always, knowing to keep things exciting. That's the beauty of Arnold Schwarzenegger. This man just knows how to have audiences be engaged with the movie and going along for the journey because he knows how to make it fun and entertaining as all hell, no matter how much people could say, depending on how you view his acting. I personally always have had an enjoyable time watching him, and I do think that there's a nice sense knowing that he's not playing like a killing machine in the sense of like he's indestructible. Because, like, yeah, he's somebody who can get beat up and hurt and can be taken down. He keeps it exciting and has that charm ability that you would think a star like him could try to pull off. And for as much as this movie does have a serious message, and I will get into my problems with that, I think ultimately Schwarzenegger just knows how to go along and just make it as fun as he can, for as much as this movie has something to say. Richard Dawson is captivating and charming as Killian, the host of the Running Man show, capturing how a TV host would be if they were dictating people's lives. We are now at a time where TV show hosts at some point can be given the chance to just determine people's lives. Let's face it, that's what it's going to come down to. And I think Richard Dawson just does a good job of matching what a TV celebrity host would be like and how they would act in situations and how manipulative but also smug they can be, but also still knowing how to be charming and charismatic in front of the cameras, in front of audiences. And I think he does that so well because he's able to pretty much fill those shoes with ease without having it feel like he needs to warm up. It felt like he was just ready the moment he would walk out in front of people and just put on that persona that he wants people to see, versus when you actually see him behind the scenes and how much of an asshole he can be. So for me, I think he adds some really good, clever commentary about the personifications that people can have in front of the public and behind the scenes, because that's a lot of the times what we see in this day and age, even though it's more in the open than ever. But still, he does a nice job of pulling you in with his two sides of it. The direction is solid. Director Paul Michael Glaser is able to showcase the dystopian world of this fictional future of 2019. Glaser does well with showcasing the struggling versus the rich. Of course, I understand that's obvious for a story like this, but he does a nice job of showcasing just average people too watching this and kind of being manipulated by the system, by how much this totalitarian government is pretty much dictating people's lives and getting people killed just so that way it can keep them distracted versus problems that this world is facing with food shortage and economic inequality. He does a nice job of making sure that people can and are easy to manipulate when you have something to distract them. And I think he does well at showcasing the glamorous version of how people see the game show versus how you would see it if you were a contestant on this said show. And Paul Michael Glaser is able to weave everything together to make it seem as if you are either sometimes the audience in the studio watching this, or you are the contestants. And for me, it's a good way of having that good mixture together, because it could easily be too much for somebody to handle, and I think Paul Michael Glaser was able to balance that out pretty well. The action is crazy. Every action set piece is enjoyable and insane when it happens. Is it dumb? Yes, but really fun. I cannot sit here and act as if was I still enjoying the dumb aspects of this movie. Yes, I was. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm high and mighty above it. I enjoy me some really dumb action movies, and for me, the action here was an entertaining one to where it's nothing to write home about, but I still had a fun time watching Arnold just beat the crap out of all of these killers that are coming after him, or anybody that gets in his way. He's just knocking and moving people out of the way for him to just get to where he needs to go. And as much as, yes, is the over the top 80s action set pieces that you kind of come to expect, it's one that I don't hate. I always appreciate seeing, especially nowadays. Because a lot of times action movies are always spectacles and they are always amazing. But I always like just having pure dumb fun. Ones that actually feel right rather than just forced upon. This actually feels like this was implemented into the movie to where I think they understand the bit of absurdity to it, and I'm able to go along with it. The story is exciting. Watching this framed man trying to survive this dangerous game show is both thrilling and interesting. A reflection of what our world can be at some point. I mentioned this. With where we're at in society now, it is getting very scary on how this is becoming a more plausible future for us. Of course, this is set in 2019, so that year has already passed. But still, the idea of it's plausible. We're living in not so great times, okay? Let's face it. And this movie does commentate on how much that the government dictating people's lives and putting convicts, as much as they have done terrible things, but putting them in dangerous games just to entertain people, just to pretty much get people to be distracted by the other real issues that are a problem of the government, not a problem with these convicts. And yet, somehow, is it easy to see how much this movie can possibly be something of today? Yeah, I can. It's kind of scary to think, but I really appreciate how much, even for when it was made, it's impressive enough to know they were able to make something that is something that we can all relate to now more than ever. The music is engaging. Composer Harold Faltermeyer crafts a score that sets the atmosphere and vibes of a fast-paced thriller, keeping it enthralling. Faltermeyer is able to keep up with the film's pacing and its action sequences to where it feels like is right with where it needs to be. Not too glamorous, it's not too big. It feels really engaging and thrilling for what it is set out to be a part of. And I always enjoy seeing composers understanding a project, especially one like this where it doesn't need to be flashy, it doesn't need to be big, it just needs to understand tone and vibe. And whenever it was brought up, I think Faltmeyer does well with making sure that it's not as glamorous as it needs to be. It just needs to get its point across in how it sets the mood of it. The pacing and runtime is quick. Scenes would never slow down, which keeps things exciting. With a runtime of 1 hour and 41 minutes, it goes by fast. I am surprised that they are able to do all this in less than 2 hours. Again, I always say this about any sort of movie, especially of the past, that tries to implement a runtime that you would think, I don't know, could it work? Maybe, but it depends. But this movie, it worked. There was never a point where it was dragging out or dulling the entire movie. It was able to just get its point across and just leave. And I think that's pretty cool because for a movie that, even though it has a serious subject matter, it is an action flick too. So, with all that said, it's one of those things of, do you really want to drag this out as long as it needs to, or do you want to just keep it within the realm of possibility of just having enough there to where it's not overstuffing you? And to me, it knew just when to be done with it. The production is incredible. All the sets, costumes, and crew work are shown throughout. For a budget of $27 million, it still looks great. Even by today's standards, it's impressive on how much $27 million can make a movie look amazing. Again, something that I think a lot of movies today can take notes of, because we don't need $200 to $300 million to just always be the case of trying to make something look like a spectacle. It just knows what it needs to be in terms of its look appeal and what pieces need to be shown that feel like are the center point of the movie, like the studio setting. That to me is supposed to, I think, be the most lavish thing there is. Everything else, no, it can be destructive, it can be dirty, it could be messy, it could be grungy. It just needs to know that that is what needs to be the focal point of knowing how a show like this needs to be as spectacular as it is for viewers. But for the contestants, no, it doesn't. It doesn't need to be amazing looking. It just needs to have this sort of feeling of a dystopian future. That's the way to do it. Able to have a production that just knew when to make it look like it is destructive and destroyed versus something that looks beautiful and gorgeous to the average person. There are, however, a few issues that does hinder it from being Arnold's best. I wouldn't put this as being like someone like the first two Terminator movies, or even Predator to that extent, or even Total Recall. It's just enjoyable for what it is, but still, here are the negatives. The writing is all over the place. Writer Stephen E. D'Souza crafts a script that can be interesting, but relies on being corny and Schwarzenegger's puns. And listen, I love them. I do. I love Schwarzenegger's puns. There's never a dull moment where I do not like them. I have always enjoyed them, even when I have my gripe with it, because I do. Because, yeah, they can be much, and I feel like the script kind of relies on it trying to be as corny as it can, but also relying on those puns to pretty much sell the movie. And for me, I think that that's just kind of taking away with what this movie's supposed to be about. And for as much as it has a heavy concept and something that is very much something to be taken seriously in a way, and not saying that there can't be any fun, but I also do think that it then feels like it's kind of like at a surface level and everything else is just goofy and dumb on top of it. And it just seems like everything's just made up to just have it be all set up for Schwarzenegger's puns, which again, don't hate them, but it starts to become very obvious. The ending is rushed. While entertaining, it felt like everything just wrapped up so quickly that it just leaves a lot to be desired. It felt like once they got to a certain point in the movie, they're just like, all right, we ran out of ideas. Just to quickly wrap this up. As much as I respect the pacing and runtime, I do. I really, really do. I'm just more saying, like, from the story perspective, I do think that the ending is just kind of, I guess, anticlimactic in a way. Because while there is, I guess, a sort of symbolism for the ending in terms of the villain's defeat, I just ultimately do think that realistically, it just ends where, like, all right, well, it's over. What, you expected more? Yeah, I kind of was, but okay, I guess we can just wrap up here. But I feel like there was supposed to be more to this, but it just felt like they wrapped up everything so that way they don't have to go any further or try to elaborate even further on where things could go. The subplots are underdeveloped. One involving the romantic interest, which is Maria Conchita Alonso, which I feel like was kind of pointless if you ask me. I feel like that was a part where that felt like studio intervention. It felt like they were forced to throw one in here. And no throwing shade to Alonso in any way. I am not throwing any shade at her whatsoever. She's had a career for herself and she has been successful in that regard. I'm just saying for this movie in particular, just don't see a point. I guess there's one aspect where it does help out Richard in some way, but even then, there could have been another way of doing that. But to me, she doesn't really add much because she's just your typical screaming and running around and waiting for somebody to come help her. And while the resistance subplot could have been more, the two characters that are with Arnold in the movie are supposed to be connected to the resistance, but even then, they don't have a huge presence that felt like the resistance is something that we all should be paying attention to. It just kind of felt like they said and that they're a part of, but it's not something where that's the main focus. You're just worried about Arnold just staying alive. And when they do get to the resistance, it's kind of like they're just there to just wrap up the movie rather than actually feeling like they are being built up. It's one of those like just shortcuts of, we found some people they're wanting to help out Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie, so we got to throw them in there so we could just end the movie. That to me is what kind of ultimately hurts the subplot. Although I think it actually seems like that is actually useful to the movie rather than the romantic subplot, if you ask me. For its faults, Schwarzenegger still succeeds in delivering a good time for viewers to watch. It's able to get by with being a good commentary on society, even if it just doesn't always hit that way, because that's the unfortunate part for a movie that has a really good concept and one that I don't know that much in terms of like comparing it to the book. I never read the book, but one that to me, when you tell me it, I think sounds like an amazing premise. I just ultimately do think that this movie is halted back by those set problems and issues, but I just don't think it ultimately ruins itself too much because it was at least able to be as fun as it can. Because in my eyes, it just hits the spot. It does. It's enjoyable for what it is, and as dumb as it can be, no dumbness hurts every so once in a while. I'm going to give The Running Man 1987 a 7 out of 10. It's a good time if you want to watch a good Schwarzenegger movie and just see him just kicking ass all around and just throwing out the one-liners. This movie's for you. I don't know how fans of the book felt when this movie came out. I mean, it was enjoyable enough by critics and audiences as well. It went on to be kind of a cult classic itself. So I guess it had some audiences out there, but in terms of people who loved the book, I don't know. But hey, maybe this remake could hopefully help out, but who knows? It depends. There's nothing wrong with having Schwarzenegger just doing what he does best. Hopefully, I can see Borgonia next weekend. Hopefully. It depends because I am seeing like showtimes and they won't appear until like October 30th. And if that's the case, probably see Springsteen first before that, but I'll let you guys know when I post it. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other reviews coming soon.